Please be seated. You know, during Advent, the season leading up to Christmas, we've been celebrating the season with Christmas music, of course, in the hymns that we sing and the songs that we hear, but in special music that we don't hear as much in church as much as we hear it on the radio. And so far, we've heard I'll Be Home for Christmas, and last week we talked about Happy Christmas. We've spoken of hope and peace. And today we talk about joy, and so it makes sense that we would sing a song that exudes the joy of the holiday season. It's the Most Wonderful Time of the Year by Andy Williams, was rated by Spotify, the music streaming service, as the 6th best Christmas song of all time, with, I must say, some very questionable choices laid ahead of it at number 6. But it's also backed by users. It's the 7th most streamed Christmas song on Spotify. So by the listeners, the 7th most popular in Spotify history in the Christmas music genre, because it's all things celebratory, isn't it? I counted, in doing very important research for the sermon, I counted 11 different references to traditions in just this 2.5-minute song. 11 different references to all of the traditions this holiday season has. Maybe you can find them in the song. Let's hear it. Thank you, choir. That was a ton of fun, wasn't it? According to Andy Williams in the song, this season we find ourselves in is the most wonderful time of the year. I don't know if you agree with that or not, but he provides a lot of reasons why he thinks this season is the most wonderful time of the year, a time filled with joy. You ready for them? Here they go. The kids jingle belling and everyone telling you be of good cheer. Holiday greetings and gay happy meetings. Parties for hosting, marshmallows for toasting, caroling out in the snow, scary ghosts stories and tales of the glories of Christmases long, long ago. With much mistletoeing and hearts a-glowing, it's the most wonderful time of the year. What I thought we could do is provide our own reasons why we think this is the most wonderful time of the year. So we're going to try something crazy, church, and I just need you to bear with me, all right? If you have a smartphone, take it out of your pocket. We're going to do an interactive activity really quick. So take out your smartphone if you feel comfortable with that. If not, you can participate in other ways. And guess what? You can participate if you're worshiping online in this activity too. Here's what I need you to do. The directions are on the screen. Go to a web browser, Safari, whatever, Google Chrome, whatever it is that you use. Go to menti.com, menti.com. When you go to menti.com, you're going to be brought to a screen that asks you to submit a code. That code is coordinated to the presentation that we have today, and that code is on the screen. It is 19975497. Enter the code 19975497 at menti.com, and we'll take just a few seconds to let folks get there. And then once you get there, you're probably going to be taken in, and you are actually going to see the question that involves your participation before it's posted on the screen here in person, which we'll get to that in just a second. If you can give me some nods if you're there and you're seeing what I'm seeing and it all makes sense and this is not too crazy. I know this is fun. But what I thought, rather than just shouting out or things like that, what happens is you're going to be asked a question and then you type in your response to the question and your answer pops up on the screen. Now, a couple disclaimers. One, we're in church. We're in church. So we can see it and we can stop the fun for everybody. More importantly, God sees it. So, I'm trusting you all to do the right thing here and answer honestly and bravely. And it's also anonymous, so your name doesn't pop up there or anything like that, so you can just type in an answer and it just pops up on the screen. Are we ready? All right, Evan, let's see what happens if this is also testing AV here today too, and I realize that, so bear with us a little bit. Right, there we go, we've already got some. All right, so we are right now, we popped up, we'll go back to the other one in a second, right? So we have the hardest part of the season. We have people talking about grief and travel and missing our family and the expectations. The finances are hard. The weather is tough. It is so busy this time of year, isn't it? It goes by so quick. I just leaned over to Brittany during one of the songs and I said, I cannot believe there are 3 candles lit up here. It is flying by. There's so many, shopping is hard, even if it's online, finding the right thing for the right people. Dealing with family, that's a big one for certain. We have family that are far away, the time. Look at these answers. You guys are doing great. Look at you. This is awesome. I know the words are getting smaller and smaller and smaller because we are getting more and more answers in there. So they keep coming. All right, let's go ahead and go back to that toolbar down there, Evan. You may have to click. Yep, and then press to your left. Go back. Uh-oh. Sorry, I know we ended up leaving it on the last one. Hit the back arrow on the top left, Evan. Yep, you're almost there. To your right, to your right, to your right, to your right. Yep, press that. Now, favorite Christmas tradition. Did that pop up on your phone? It should be interactive. It should pop back up on your phone to type in your favorite Christmas tradition. Let's see if these answers start popping up here. Or we've failed miserably. We didn't fail miserably on the last one at all. We started doing them out of, there we go. Songs, food, church. Somebody knew God was watching. They're like, I'm putting church. Christmas Eve. Yep, big one. Oh, we do a gift scavenger hunt. See, some of these can be specific to your family. They can be generic. You can make it however you want. Time with family get-togethers, putting up the tree, shopping. That one was in both categories. Music. Lots of family time getting put up there. Christmas pickle. If you guys know what that is, does anybody else put a pickle on their Christmas tree and then you got to find it? Christmas Eve breakfast. That's a good one. Now they're moving them around for me, so it's hard for me to find. We get the idea here, all right? You guys can keep answering, keep having some fun. Here's the point of what I wanted to do, is we have this song that celebrates this time of year, right? And we have an Andy Williams song that celebrates this time of year that says, it is so wonderful, isn't it? It's the best time of year. And yet, there are 2 sides to the same coin, aren't there? There's all of the reasons we put up here about the things that we love about the season, but we came up with quite a few answers about what made the season so difficult, didn't we? So when we talk about it being the most wonderful time of the year, and joy, and sleigh rides, and jingle bells, and all this stuff, in the middle of that is also loss, is an absence of family, is feeling so stressed out because you don't have enough time in the world to do all of the things that the world seems to expect of you. Sometimes we deal with the most difficult people in our lives once a year, and it's this time of year. Unfortunately, it's great to see family, but you know what? Sometimes there's a reason we only see some of these folks once a year. You know what I'm saying? I'm not talking about my family, luckily, but it's true, isn't it? We don't want to admit it, but it's true. As easy as it is to name the things that make this time of year so wonderful, it is just as easy to name the things that make it difficult. Isn't it? We all feel it in some way or another, and I think what this is all about, why it becomes the most wonderful time of the year, and at the same time can be the most difficult time of the year, is because there's something about this season that just takes the emotions we're feeling and just amplifies them. It takes the joy that we feel and makes it bigger and makes it brighter, right? There are decorations that are so gaudy, we would never dream of putting them up in our house until they go on a Christmas tree, right? And then all of a sudden, it is just perfect. There are outfits so terrible, we would never dream of wearing them except for Christmas Eve, because everything is big. And at the same token, when we hurt, there's something about the season that twists the knife on us a little bit. Maybe it's because we think we're supposed to be happy, because we think we're supposed to be joyful, but I don't feel it. And the truth of the matter is that, this is not just a cultural thing, but this is a theological thing as well. Because this time of year isn't just about all the cultural things that we named, but of course, it's about what we are originally supposed to celebrate in the season, which is the Christ child. And I think the responses that we saw today, along with commercial successes of songs like we just heard, show that there's something to the idea that we do think this time of year culturally is wonderful. But we also made it obvious that a lot of Christmas songs don't deal with the other stuff, do they? They don't deal with the other stuff that maybe isn't quite so wonderful, that isn't quite so joyful. And if anyone understood the mixed emotions or the mixed feelings that came with this season, it was the originators of the season, Mary and Joseph. If anyone understood the mixed emotions that came with this time, it was the parents of Jesus, Mary and Joseph. In the book of Matthew, we get a little bit different picture than we get from Luke 2. See, we love to read Luke 2, don't we? Because it's beautiful and it's wonderful and it's everything we like to see in our Christmas pageants, in our Christmas songs, and in our Christmas movies. Matthew's depiction of this is a little bit messier. It's probably a little bit more realistic, right? Matthew's story is not the one that we put on our Christmas cards. That's Luke. And they both deserve a place for our attention, most certainly. But Matthew offers us something a little bit different. So we're going to be, in Matthew 1, we'll be in verse 18, It goes like this: "This is how the birth of Jesus the Messiah came about. His mother Mary was pledged to be married to Joseph, but before they came together," adults, are you with me? "Before they came together, she was found to be pregnant through the Holy Spirit. Because Joseph, her husband, was faithful to the law and yet did not want to expose her to public disgrace, he had in mind to divorce her quietly." Right, very confusing, right? Because it says Joseph, her husband, but they're betrothed, not married, all right? So the Jewish ritual of this was very complicated. It was like you're not married, but you kind of are already married. So that's why it refers to him as her husband, even though they haven't consummated their marriage yet. Okay, so they're betrothed, not together. But he still has in mind to divorce her quietly. Also part of that process in the Jewish tradition. Because you're not married yet, but you're betrothed, so you still have to go through this formal process of separating that relationship. Okay? But after he had considered this, Joseph, An angel of the Lord appeared to him in a dream and said, Joseph, son of David, do not be afraid to take Mary home as your wife, because what is conceived in her is from the Holy Spirit. She will give birth to a son, and you are to give him the name Jesus, because he will save his people from their sins. All this took place to fulfill what the Lord had said through the prophet. The virgin will conceive and give birth to a son, and they will call him Emmanuel, which means God with us. When Joseph woke up, he did what the angel of the Lord had commanded him and took Mary home as his wife. But he did not consummate their marriage until she gave birth to a son, and he gave him the name Jesus. When we see the story through his lens, maybe a little bit more through Joseph's lens as well, we see all the stressors happening a little bit differently than we do in Luke 2. Because see, what happens is, in Luke 2, the angel visits Mary, tells her everything's going to be wonderful, and in Mary we see a faithful response, right? She says, my soul magnifies the Lord. Whatever the Lord has in mind for me, may it be so. Isn't that wonderful? We don't pay attention to the other things that had to be faced with what God had just put on her, and in Matthew we see them a little bit. So Joseph in this story learns that Mary is pregnant, and he knows that it's not his child. He knows that for a fact. It can't be mine. I don't know whose it is, but it can't be mine. So he begins the process of quietly divorcing her in order to bring about more honor to her and less disgrace and less shame to her and their relationship in general. Because see, it's still disgraceful to the man in the situation as well too. That would have remained the easy thing to do in this situation, most certainly. But in a vision from God, he learns about what is going on. And now, he has the added stress of fathering the Messiah. And so he too is now subject to this public shame of pregnancy before marriage. People talk. And people are talking about Mary and Joseph and what in the world is going on. You think anybody's believing Mary and Joseph's story? You know, we held hands. Now Mary's pregnant. We can't imagine, in today's culture, there's a stigma, right, of this. There still is. You cannot fathom the stigma 2,000 years ago in Jewish culture. We can't. That's an okay thing, but we can't imagine what kind of stress that they were going through. Plus, they likely had some rejection by their own family because of what's been going on, too. Not to mention, even though they've had visits from angels and visions, there's still a lot of personal confusion happening here, isn't there? Really? What does this even mean? Why me? What am I supposed to do? How can I father the Messiah? How can I parent the Messiah? And on top of all of this, the Jewish people are living under a foreign regime. See, the Romans are in power. And so what happens is Mary and Joseph now have to travel when Mary is very, very late term to Bethlehem for a census. Historians estimate that this trip from Nazareth to Bethlehem, when Mary was about to deliver, would have taken about a week. A week of walking. We see images of Mary riding on a donkey. Scripture doesn't necessarily really give us a whole lot there. A week of traveling in the late-term pregnancy of a child you're not supposed to have. And then, of course, we learn later they escaped to Egypt to protect the child that they've just given birth to from this foreign regime who wants to kill this child because they perceive this child to be a threat. Not sure Mary and Joseph would have felt the same way about Andy Williams. And yet, in the middle of it, Scripture tells us that Mary experiences joy in this calling that causes her to sing God's praises. It was the visits from the angels, the visions from God, the visits from the angels that reassured Mary and Joseph that God had a plan for them, to go into this calling unafraid, because it's an incredible calling, and God had big things in store for them. See, it was these experiences that allowed them to live faithfully even though their circumstances were difficult. And it was because of the birth of Jesus that they were able to rejoice. The calling of God, the presence of God, which they received in a variety of ways, and their rejoicing of the situation did not remove the difficulty of their circumstances. Not one tiny bit. The approval that they felt like they received from God through the angels did not change the public's mind about what was going on in their relationship. The rejoicing they had for the fact that the Messiah is coming and the Messiah has been born did not change the oppressive rule of the Roman regime. They were still in the middle of the mess. In fact, it's just going to get messier from here. God's presence, God's approval, and their rejoicing did not take them away from the situation they found themselves in. Instead, they have to rejoice in the middle of it. Because it would have been easy for them to run as far away as they could from the situation, no matter how difficult it was, but instead they choose to rejoice. They don't rejoice for the public shame. They don't rejoice fleeing to Egypt. They had a lot going on in their lives that wasn't anything worthy of rejoicing in their circumstances, but they had the one thing that is more worthy of our joy than anything else. We do this during this time of year. Can you imagine approaching Mary and Joseph after they've just found out what's happening to them, after dealing what's happening around them in the public? It's Christmas. Cheer up. It's the most wonderful time of the year. Be joyful. You should be happier. See, joy doesn't always look like parties for hosting and marshmallows for toasting and caroling out in the snow. But the problem is we put too much emphasis on those things to bring us our joy. Here's your permission, friends. We put a bunch of stuff on the screen that says, that does not give me joy, that does not give me joy, that does not give me joy. You want to know a secret? You don't have to do those things. You don't have to. You don't have to buy people presents if it's going to bankrupt you. You don't have to go to places with toxic people who hurt you. You don't have to. But those things are supposed to give us joy. How much easier is it for us to say no to those things that don't give us joy if we find our joy someplace else? Someplace else that's better for us, someplace else that's healthier for us, and someplace else that doesn't change, that doesn't leave us, that doesn't forsake us, that is constant. The season of Advent, the season of waiting, isn't about how faithful we are in the waiting, it's how faithful Jesus is in the coming. That is not changing, so where is our joy? Something has happened in our families that says our family is one of the hardest things about this season. Something's changed in our mind, our heart, and our culture that says buying all these presents makes the season really hard, but I have to do it. Somebody put up their expectations as the hardest part. That's all of it in a whole, isn't it? I'm expected to do this. We can let go of those unhealthy expectations. We don't have to place that weight on ourselves anymore. Why? Because joy is available to us someplace else. And so maybe for you, This season calls for fewer gay happy meetings and more time alone. That doesn't mean that you're less joyful. It means that your joy can come from someplace else. Maybe the season asks of you fewer presents because it's tighter this time of year. Doesn't mean that you don't love people. It means that your joy can come from someplace else. And guess what? You can teach them that theirs can too. You don't need for this to be the Andy Williams most wonderful time of the year for you. You don't need it. Because what we celebrate this time of year, what we say gives us our hope, our peace, our joy, and our love, stands right here in the middle. This is the Christ candle. Christ is not available to us only in the most wonderful time of the year. It's available all of the time. And I dare say that if Mary and Joseph could have avoided all of the things that were robbing them of their joy, they would have. If they could have avoided public shame, they would have. If they could have avoided family rejection, I dare say they would have. But not at the exchange of the calling God had placed on them. Not at the exchange of the presence of Jesus. They simply recognized what did bring them joy. And they made that their purpose. They were able to rejoice even in the middle of all of their difficult circumstances, all of the things that didn't bring them joy. They were still able to rejoice, still able to hope, still able to love because of the presence of Jesus. And that is what joy is all about. We can most certainly get joy from those circumstances, friends. I'm not poo-pooing on the song. I love most of the things that he sings about in the song. They bring me joy. But there might be circumstances in my life that they don't. But there's not going to be a circumstance in our life where the presence of Jesus Christ cannot offer us joy. And so we must choose that. Because if we rely on our circumstances to bring us joy, sooner or later we get disappointed. People disappoint us, our relationships disappoint us, our family disappoints us. Our culture disappoints us. But if we want to be able to rejoice in all circumstances like Mary and Joseph have, our joy has to come from a place that cannot fail us. Our joy has to come from a place that's always going to be there. So may our chief joy not come from parties, the traditions. Let us celebrate those things if indeed they feel worthy of celebrating to us. But may our chief joy be in the coming of Christ, that our joy may not be dependent on our circumstances, but in the faithful one who never fails us. And one of the ways that